New Orleans Saints defensive end Carl Granderson is one season away from elite edge defender status. We got all of that and a little bit of lagniappe for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? I am your host, your friend Ross Jackson, New Orleans native, your New Orleans Saints expert and credentialed member of the media covering those New Orleans Saints as the senior writer and reporter over at Saint News Network. And on today's episode of Locked On Saints, we're taking a look at a group of New Orleans Saints that have the potential to be among the next generation of NFL stars. We're looking at a bunch of different positions here. We'll take a look at Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed, why they have exactly what it is that the NFL wants when it comes to star wide receivers. Paulson Adebo, New Orleans Saints starting cornerback, has everything that he needs to be amongst the next generation of top NFL cover corners. And Carl Granderson, New Orleans Saints defensive end, could be among the next generation of elite edge defenders, and 2024 could help to solidify that trajectory. We got all that and much more coming up for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints. We appreciate you very much for making us your first listen of the day every day and for being an everydayer here on the Locked On Saints podcast, which is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Happy 4th of July, everybody. I'm recording this on the 4th of July. Of course, you got yesterday's episode already, but happy 4th since I don't think I said it in that episode. Hope everybody had a fun and safe one. Real quick, before we dive into today's main topic, I want to explain why I changed topics for today's show. The original topic for today's show was going to be 3 New Orleans Saints, or a group of New Orleans Saints that could potentially be traded away before the season begins, or maybe later on in the season before the trade deadline. And I didn't mean for that to be a very negative show, but as I was planning it, and I still have all of my notes from that show written down, so I might do that show again later on or something like that. But as I was going through, everything that I did made it sound like if this player gets traded, it's because they're bad. Or if this player gets traded, it's because the team is bad. Or if this team player gets traded, it's because of this negative thing, blah, blah, blah. And I just don't feel like that's what you deserve right now. It feels like right now is a good time for some positivity, taking a look at the potential of this team, all that. There's so much unknown about what this team is right now that why lean into players being shipped off when we could actually lean into some of the good things that these players will be able to do. So I might come back to the trade conversation later. I want to thank my insider group, the Locked On Saints Insiders, for their help in switching over to this topic as well. But I wanted to give you the show that you wanted. And I think that this is probably a little bit closer to what it is that you're looking for in your off-season content. So with that being said, as I always say, this is not my show. This is your show. So here's a gesture to actually put that on full display for you. I want to take a look at these players that could potentially be, that have what it takes, let me put it that way, that have the potential to be in the NFL's future generation of superstars. And generally, when you talk about superstars, you're talking about positions like edge rusher, like cornerback, like wide receiver, like running back, and then of course, quarterback is in there as well. I'm going to hold off on the quarterback conversation because that can be a full show. How could Derek Carr get himself into that in the latter part of his career? Could Spencer Rattler or Jake Haener into that conversation? We'll get to that in a few days. But what I want to look at here is Carl Granderson to get started and some of these other positions, these non-QB positions, because Carl Granderson had a very, very good season last year. And when I say a very, very good season, I mean beyond just what he did as a pass rusher. 8.5 sacks last year was fine and dandy and good, right? Not just fine. It was really, really good. But the 14 tackles for a loss, along with the 20 hits on the quarterback, are just as much a part of the narrative as well. So you'll notice that when I mentioned Carl Granderson becoming a part of the next generation of elite players, I talked about him being the next generation of elite edge defenders, not just edge rushers, not just pass rushers, but edge defenders. For the past 2 seasons, by just about any metric you look at, whether you like PFF grades, whether you like some of the other in-depth kind of, negative EPA creation, all these other things, what's the other one? DVOA, like all these other things. No matter how you look at it, Carl Granderson has either contributed to, because DVOA is more of a team statistic, or has been the New Orleans Saints' best run defender on the defensive line. right? Coming from the edge. And so when I look at his 14 tackles for a loss, his 78 total tackles, these are really, really good numbers for a defensive end. He could double next season, double-digit sacks and double-digit tackles for a loss. We saw Cam Jordan years ago go triple-double. He had double-digit sacks, double-digit tackles for a loss, and double-digit passes defended at the line. But Carl Granderson could go double-double. He only had one pass defense at the line of scrimmage last year. We'll see if maybe that's something he adds or maybe he gets a little bit better at throughout his career and everything. But if nothing else, he should enter that conversation of elite edge rusher status by getting into the double-digit sack conversation. He was only 1.5 sacks away last year. And then maintaining his already solid reputation as an elite run defender from the position as well, which not only comes down to the 14 tackles for a loss, but the 78 total tackles, 44 of which were solo last year. Just to give you an idea of how impressive that is at the position, that made him number 2 in the NFL in both of those categories in 2024. The only player that was ahead of him in both those categories, total tackles and solo tackles, and actually combined tackles as well. Carl Granderson had 34 of those. The only player to be ahead of Carl Granderson in all 3 of those stats was Max Crosby. That's a pretty good person to be in conversation with. Max Crosby is one of the best edge rushers and edge defenders in the NFL right now. And what a story he has. And what a story Carl Granderson can become as well if he were to move into that elite edge defender conversation. And so in 2023, he already kind of established what I would call the foothold, right? It's one thing to be at the podium. It's another thing to speak at the podium. He's at the podium now, right? He got there in 2023. Now he has to speak at the podium in 2024. And no pun intended, but speaking of speaking at the podium, he is an absolute joy to talk to from the media side as well. He was excellent when the Saints made him available to media after one of the minicamp practices. And he has grown so much in terms of his comfort there. He's all smiles. He's a big personality. He's always shouting out the other guys, talking about the team first aspect of it, giving love to his teammates. All of those things go into making stars in the NFL as well. Look at Cam Jordan. Cam Jordan's a star in the NFL because of what he does on the field, but he's also a star because of his personality and the way that he conducts himself in those pressers, right? The funny moments, the clippable moments, all that. But he can also, you can put a microphone in his hand and have him go and do sideline reporting for the UFL and all these other things. Like, he is just that dude. And I think that Carl Granderson is seeing that and is really getting comfortable in his own version of what that is. And so I think between his production as a pass rusher, his production as a run defender, his overall contributions to the defense. Now, if he starts to take on a little bit more of a leadership role, because once Cam Jordan does hang up the cleats, which I don't expect to be after this season, maybe a couple more seasons, he becomes the elder statesman in the room and ends up taking on a big leadership role. And now, as he has grown a little bit more as a media guy as well, everything is there. He checks all the boxes for being a star, a superstar in the NFL. The big thing is going to be, can he continue to take steps forward in terms of production? But we've seen it every single year, him get better and better and better every single season. Now going into his 4th year here with the New Orleans Saints, or going into his next year here with the New Orleans Saints, a real opportunity for him to take the time and take the space at the podium and say, hey, I'm that dude. And look, what the Saints have done on the defensive line should help him out as well. Adding Chase Young, continuing to invest in the interior of the defense. We'll see what happens with Peyton Turner and Isaiah Foskey. Cam Jordan coming back healthy. All that stuff makes Carl Granderson's job even easier as being the elite pass rusher for this team, and then entering himself into the conversation of elite pass rushers and edge defenders across the entire NFL. Coming up next, another guy that has a real opportunity here in 2024 to do the exact same is cornerback Paulson Adebo, who already has everything that he needs to be considered an elite NFL corner. We got that coming up for you here as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints brought to you by our friends at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, patience, the formula that brings home championships is the same formula that will keep your ride or die alive. Head over to eBay Motors because they have everything that they need or that you need in order to make sure that you're maintaining your vehicle and leveling it up to peak performance. Whether you're looking for superchargers, roof racks, LED headlights, exhaust kits, whatever it is that you're looking for, eBay Motors has you covered. With 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you're always going to be able to find what you need at ebaymotors.com. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, that part is guaranteed to fit the first time, every time, or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts that you need at the prices that you want, eBay Motors has everything that it takes to level up the performance of your vehicle and start stacking those W's, bringing home that MVP performance. Keep your ride or die alive today at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply, and of course, eBay Guarantee Fit available only to U.S. customers. All right, family. Much like Carl Granderson, Paulson Adebo, New Orleans Saints starting cornerback, has a real opportunity here in 2024 to establish himself as an elite cover corner. We appreciate you very much, as always, making Locked On Saints your first listen of the day, every day. Don't forget to go and check out Locked On Sports today as well. The 24/7 stream is programmed to give you everything that you need to make sure that you are getting all of the biggest stories around the world of sports, and all of it is for free, and all of it is without all the yelling, screaming, and arguing. It's all brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network and the local Locked On experts that cover the teams every single day and know them like the back of their hands, just like we do here at Locked On Saints. So go and check out Locked On Sports today over on YouTube and on the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now, if you have been an everydayer for a while, you know that I have been very high on Paulson Adebo for years. I'm talking pre-draft. I'm talking the year we thought he was coming out of college. And then he decided to go back to college. And then I had to wait a whole nother year before the next draft cycle started so that I could talk about Paulson Adebo again. I was stoked when the Saints drafted him. Former wide receiver, great ball skills, good hands, understands route combinations, route running, the route tree, leverage, all this stuff from his experience as a wide receiver, and now has translated that over to being a phenomenal, physical, big, strong, fast cover corner. And because of all of that, and because of the way that he has mentally translated the game for himself, he has everything that he needs to be a top NFL cornerback, and in fact should already be in some of those conversations. Let me give you a couple reasons why I think Paulson Adebo belongs in the future superstar potential conversation. Number one, his press man style that he plays here for New Orleans, and of course that New Orleans asks him to play, draws eyes. It is the type of play that guys like Brian Baldinger find and highlight on a random Thursday afternoon. It's the type of thing that a Tony Romo during a game will stop and telestrate on top of for a replay to show you, wow, here's why I couldn't throw the football to Paulson Adebo if I were on the field right now. Okay, so there's that part of it, right? Just the style of play. We haven't even gotten to the takeaways yet. Just the style of play that he has is the style of play that analysts fall in love with. And because of that, the profile, every time he makes a play, gets higher and higher and higher. And because a lot of analysts now are former football players, they're seeing the things that aren't just the big highlight plays. They're seeing the, wow, look at how quickly he flipped his hips in transition. Watch how quickly he bounced from one area to the other to take away this play. They're looking at the things that didn't result in a target because he didn't allow a target. So that is one of the things that I think boosts his profile a bit. He doesn't have to make the big plays to be seen in this system. It's perfect for him. However, he can make the big plays. He has the takeaway generation. He's got 7 interceptions in just 3 years. Don't get me wrong, but seven of those interceptions came in 2 seasons, and he had that down year in between when he was dealing with injury. He had 4 interceptions last year, and on top of the 4 interceptions, he also had 18 passes defensed, which aren't the same as pass breakups. Pass breakups is when the ball is coming your way as a DB and you knock the football away by making contact with the football. Passes defensed are either you're making contact with the football, or you're making contact with the receiver, or you're getting your hand up in a way that keeps the receiver from making the completion. It incorporates all of the things. 18 passes defense last year. That's an outstanding level of not allowing the football to be completed. And bear in mind that he's doing all of this while being one of the most targeted cornerbacks in the NFL with 100 targets. He allowed only 55 completions on top of that, a 55% completion percentage, easiest math I've ever done in my life. So he's not getting all of this production off of he's only allowing a 55% completion percentage, but he was only targeted, 30 something times or whatever. It's not that. It's not the way that you have to look at it on the collegiate level. He was one of the most targeted corners in the NFL because he spent at least a portion of the season lined up from one of the most elite corners in the NFL already in Marshawn Lattimore. And he'll get that same, dare I say, honor, right? Because it's a task when you're targeted that much. Dare I say honor, but he'll get that same opportunity here in 2024 to, again, he's at the podium. Now he's got to speak when he's there. He's also a solid tackler. This is something that we love when we talk about cornerbacks in the NFL, especially in aggressive press man systems like New Orleans. New Orleans wants its corners to be able to tackle. He had only a 6.2% missed tackle rate last year. Outstanding. On top of that, a 62.7 passer rating allowed. Let me explain why this is impressive. And remember, this is all while being targeted a century's worth of times, 100 times. 62.7 passer rating allowed, number four amongst all corners who were targeted at least 75 times. I went down 25. He would be second on the list of those targeted 100 or more times behind only L'Jarius Sneed, who just signed a massive contract after being traded to the Tennessee Titans. Hopefully, Paulson Adebo gets his massive contract to stay in the city of New Orleans, not because he ends up being traded. Ubbity. I did the Porky Pig thing again. But he deserves the big contract. And so hopefully he gets that extension. I don't know if it happens this offseason. I could see Paulson Adebo getting his extension during the season, like we saw at Carl Granderson last year, Demario Davis years ago, Marshawn Lattimore a couple years ago as well, on top of all that. He was also second in fewest touchdowns allowed. Only 1 touchdown allowed, according to Pro Football Reference, on at least 85 targets. If you bump that up to 100 targets, he's the number one on the list. The only one to not allow multiple touchdowns despite being targeted over 100 times. So what I'm trying to drive home here is there's an insane level of production, an impressive level of production being done on an insane level of consistency because he's being tried over and over and over 100 times over again, because you got to throw the football somewhere when you call those passing plays. And Paulson Adebo has not at all, even when he has given up the big play here or there, or has been caught for the big play, or even called for a flag because of his aggressive play style, he has the short memory that is necessary to be elite at the position, to be one of the best at the position, to be a superstar at the position. Because he can go through 100 targets in a season and allow a single touchdown. He can go through 100 targets on a season and make sure that 18 of them hit the ground, or that 4 of them end up in his hands. Oh, and on top of all that, not miss tackles. Come down, make plays in the run game, crash down, make plays, and stop players at the catch point, make tackles at the catch point, all those other things, not allowing the big yards after catch moments. Y'all, Paulson Adebo, I mean, the more that I look at it, he's already a superstar. He just hasn't gotten the recognition yet. But because the style that he plays, the takeaway generation, all this other stuff, it's only a matter of time as long as he continues this trajectory. Got a great rookie season, a down second-year season, an outstanding third season. Now let's see where he goes from there. But boy, is the sky high for a guy like Paulson Adebo. Coming up next, sky's also high for Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed. The New Orleans Saints tandem of wide receivers are exactly what the NFL loves. We got that coming up for you as we continue on and wrap up today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp Therapy Online has been awesome for me. I know it can be awesome for you as well. Look, I have benefited big time from therapy, building up courage, dealing with my social anxiety and things like that. I know the guy that does a 30-minute podcast every single day has social anxiety. Yes, he does. And it's bad. And so therapy has helped me make it not so bad, or at least in times where it is bad, understand and appreciate the challenge of it so that I don't start feeling down about myself because of it. All of that is stuff that I learned through therapy, thanks to BetterHelp, who make it super easy and convenient for you to be able to get the therapy that you're looking for. It's designed to be entirely online, suited to your schedule, video chats, phone calls, all that kind of stuff. So you don't have to do the waiting room. You don't have to do traffic, all of that. So it's awesome. Please go and check out BetterHelp today. Visit BetterHelp.com/locked-on to get $10 off of your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/locked-on. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. The New Orleans Saints tandem of wide receivers Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed are on a track of when, not if, when it comes to being household names across the NFL. We got that coming up for you here as we continue on and wrap up today's episode of Locked On Saints. Don't forget, we are your team every day, so we'll be back on Monday. And on Monday's show, we're taking a look at our getting started with our training camp previews. New Orleans Saints, by the way, have opened up 2 practices, none of them in California, but 2 practices when they return home from California. We'll go over that as well as much more in terms of a big training camp preview on Monday. And one of the big things we're going to focus on is how Clint Kubiak's new system can elevate and turn the clock forward for the New Orleans Saints offense in just one offseason like that. That's something that the New Orleans Saints are going to have to do. I'll explain to you how they can get it done. All right, so I wanted to wrap up today, take a look at Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed. We talk a lot about Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed on this show because they're already superstars amongst the New Orleans Saints roster and amongst the New Orleans Saints fan base. But in terms of the outward view, outside of that, they might not necessarily be looked at that way amongst the Justin Jeffersons and the Tyreek Hills and the Jamar Chases and the A.J. Browns and all of that. But what I think is on the way for these 2 players in 2024 is big when it comes to furthering their profile within that conversation of the elite NFL receivers out there, because they already do all of the things that the NFL loves when it comes to wide receivers. They bring speed to the game. Rashid Shaheed might be one of the fastest players in the NFL. We just don't know it because he didn't get the opportunity to run a 40-yard dash during his draft process. So there's nothing for us to point back to, but watch him on tape. Watch him on the field. He's faster than everybody. Faster than everybody. He once burned one of the best corners in the NFL in Jalen Ramsey, who had like a 13-yard cushion. Chris Olave, same thing. Elite speed. He ran his 40. Elite speed, elite route running capability, and really, really good hands. And now all of a sudden, over the course of the last year, you watch both these guys also add contested catch ability, making some tough catches. Look at what Rashid Shaheed did. Against the Houston Texans? He had that insane catch. He had another insane catch. Just watch the Atlanta Falcons game to wrap up the season and watch all the insane catches that these 2 guys had. Chris Olave has so many impressive catches throughout the season that the NFL themselves tweeted out a highlight reel of all of his insane catches throughout the 2023 season. And it's like a good 2.5 minutes long or whatever. I mean, it's a long video. And so these guys do bring that speed. Now they're developing as these incredible catch guys. Now let's look on top of that. Big plays. Deep down the field type plays. Rashid Shaheed against Indianapolis. Rashid Shaheed against the Atlanta Falcons. Chris Olave against the Atlanta Falcons. Like, you can pinpoint all of these enormous moments, these big downfield plays that these guys have. That is the NFL's most attractive material that they can sell, are big plays downfield. the deep ball. And both of these guys have mastered the deep ball, and they've mastered it with Derek Carr. They did a really good job when it came to the deep ball last year. Derek Carr threw I think it was the most catchable passes beyond 20 yards last season. And these guys get to be the benefactors of that, knowing that they're the fastest players on the field whenever they're on the field, and knowing that they have the capability for the big play. I think the next thing that they can add to their game, and you've heard me talk about this for both Chris as well as Rashid for a while, the two things really that they can both add to their game is, of course, more scoring potential. That should be available to them here in 2024, just because they're the bona fide 1 and 2. There's no question marks about that. And I doubt they're going to be taken off the field in scoring opportunities as much as they have been when Pete Carmichael was calling plays and was putting out these really kind of curious and weird personnel packages and things like that. So they should be on the field more, which I think will make a big difference for them as well. The other thing that I think that they can add beyond the scoring capabilities is the yards after catch capability. Can these guys start to show you what they can do? And look, this was the one knock on Chris Olave's game coming out of college. He's not a yards after catch guy. That's fine. He doesn't have to be the hit him, on a 5-yard slant and he turns it into a 65-yard touchdown guy. But what we saw in the middle of the season last year, really post Minnesota, all those times where Chris would catch a football and go down, or catch a football and get out of bounds, or catch a football and kind of avoid contact, something happened to where all of a sudden he started inviting the contact. Catch the football and get upfield for an extra 3 or 4 yards. That's enough. That's what you need to see from Chris Olave's game. And if you watch the last 5 games of the season versus the first 12 games of the year in his first rookie season entirely, you saw the mentality change out of nowhere. Or not out of nowhere, but you could see the mentality change of, I'm working upfield, I'm fighting for more yards, I'm trying to do more. And I think that was a big turning point for Chris Olave's game. Huge turning point for his game. Rashid Shaheed in the yards after catch conversation. Now we get to a little bit more of the explosive make a man miss and pick up an additional 15, 20 yards type of conversation. And we saw that in moments with Chris Olave as well. With Rashid Shaheed as well in last season. Now with the play action game and the play action rollout game in particular, where you can fake the outside run to the right side, fold over the outside shoulder if you're Derek Carr, get moving to your dominant side, and then have an offense moving with you to that other sideline. And you can hit a guy like Rashid Shaheed in stride, working across the field, but still upfield, hit him in stride, and then he goes and picks up the additional yardage. We saw that work 3 or 4 times toward the end of last season. It's going to be a greater staple in this year's offense. So the offense doing what it takes to really, really utilize these guys in the way that maximizes what it is that they have to offer only gets them further and further and further up the superstar conversation ladder. And here's the other thing that I really think goes towards that as well. Take a look at the guys that have been the superstars of the NFL as of late when it comes to that position. They're not the machismo guys anymore. They're not the Terrell Owens, the Randy Moss, big personality dudes. They're the personality guys because they have the confidence, they dance, they celebrate together. Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, all these guys, Cooper Kupp, they still have the sort of confidence of an elite wide receiver. They still dance and celebrate. They still enjoy the spotlight. But for the most part, outside of that, they just get the job done and they just work. And that's who Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed are as well. They're both remarkably humble dudes. I talk to them in the locker rooms all the time and everything. They're remarkably humble dudes. And I think that goes a long way with what the NFL likes in terms of elevating those personalities within their stardom conversation. So I'll take it as a little bit of a step further, just like we did with Carl Granderson and just like we did with Paulson Adebo. There's a personality. There's a, what's the word that I'm looking for? There's a demeanor to these guys that are superstar trajectory dudes that I think the NFL likes. And so they'll elevate the profile, they'll elevate the foundation as well. So they have it on the field, they have it off the field, and they have the type of personality that's going to receive the additional support of becoming those faces of franchises, faces of the NFL. I can't wait to see Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed in 2024. They're going to be so much fun. All right, so there you go. A couple of players that I think have the potential to be in the league's conversation of the next, or not conversation, sorry, but in the league's next generation of superstars. Let me know who you think we could add to this list as well. We appreciate you very much. As always, make Locked On Saints your first listen of the day every day. I'll see you on Monday. Until then, make sure you go and check out Locked On LSU, Matt Moscona, as well as Locked On Pelicans over with Jake Madison, and continue to check out everything going on here with Locked On Louisiana, especially with all the Brandon Ingram conversation going on. Want to know what it would be like for Brandon Ingram to stay in New Orleans? Jake Madison's got you covered. We appreciate you very much. As always, make a Locked On Saints part of your day, part of your routine, for saying yes to me and the show. As always, if you see me, please say hi. And if you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you follow me on your favorite social media at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing. Let me know how you're living. Let me know how you're momming them. And trust you, that nation, I'll holla at you.